Hey guys and girls, Nathan here. Welcome to this week's episode of Tuesday Night Live. The video was just a bit blurry. I had people leaving the office or saying bye to them. So welcome aboard. Thanks a lot for tuning in and letting me be a part of your Tuesday night evening. Tonight, going to talk about some really cool news articles. I'm going to go into some real basics about a couple little topics. So I thought let's have something different to talk about tonight. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. If you have or have not seen, this here is the Dow Jones Industrial Average Index. I've been saying for a while that we will see certain things happen in the economy. A lot of people are freaking out about debt and interest rates and what's happening with the economy out there. I am still very happy. I've actually gone out to go get debt myself. I've gone out and got the most amount of debt in a few years. I haven't actually had any debt. So I'm in the process of, I'm actually going to have a meeting with a lender tomorrow. And I'm like, I need to get to $1 billion in debt. How will I get there, right? Because I'm seeing so much opportunities. I think we're right on track for my hyperinflationary strategy that I see. So yeah, with this one here is the industrial Dow Jones average. Why is this important? Is Nathan going to go buy shares? Is this something that he's looking into? Absolutely not. I do not like paper assets. I do not own any paper assets at this point in time. It doesn't mean I won't own them, but I've just got too many other things that I'm doing and I see a bit of value out there. So this here is a 1 month chart. So this on the bottom here shows from the August the 29th to September the 26th. So we can see here the line at the top here says 32,000. 32,000. In and around here is the 12th of September. This line here where it says red, where it's red, means it's had a negative week. It's closed lower the week after than what it has. So it's only 1 week up and it's not really up on the scale. And when we have a look at this here, we can see that we're at 29,260. We're down 329 points in 1 day, or 1%. So the stock market lost 1% yesterday. This is just yesterday's. But if we have a look a week ago, we're at 31,000 points on the stock market, and a week before that was 32. So over 2 weeks, the stock market in the US, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, has lost 3,000 points. That is 10%, right? No one is talking about that. No one. Right? Question, why is no one not talking about that? Why is that not big news, right? Let's just put this into perspective. The fucking stock market has just lost 10% in 10 days and no one's talking about it. Why? Right? Why aren't they talking about why did the stock market lose 10% in 10 days? Is this not important? That means that if the stock market, if all your super fund was invested into the stock market in the last 2 weeks, then you would have lost 10% of your super fund. Would that make an impact to you? Right? Why is this not being spoken about? Why is this being so quiet? And the ultimate question is why is it actually happening? Right? And that's what it's all about. Did you know that in 2008, when the GFC happened in, I think it was September, October 2008, which is eerily, 14 years ago, and it's 2 7-year cycles since then, the stock market fell by 777 points in 1 day. That was the biggest loss in the stock market. We've got here 329 points. The article I'm about to read is 800 points, and 1 day it was 1,200 points lower in the day. The stock market fell by 1,200 points. No one's talking about it. It's fallen by 10% in 10 days, right? No one's talking about it. Very, very important to understand what's happening here, guys. And I said, and you guys all watching this would remember and recall me saying, going back probably 3 months ago, 4 months ago, wait until September or October this year, you will see the market start to crash. And it's because we're heading into a recession due to monetary policy and what is happening out there. So that leads me on to my news articles for the day. So first news article here is, where are we? We've got lots of articles here. Let's see what we've got. The first one here, news.com, scary. Ooh, scary, 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 scary. The Dow flirts with bear market amid fears of a deeper recession. Why do we have a recession? Let's see what lies they are putting in the media this week. Wall Street has neared a bear market territory on Friday as stocks fell sharply to end the week with the Dow Jones down more than 800 points. Wall Street's massive sell-off overnight had the Dow flirting with the bear market as investors appear to resign to the fact that the Fed has abandoned hopes for a soft landing and will continue to aggressively raise rates to fight inflation, even if it means a deeper recession. Even if it means a deeper recession. Why? Because we're already in a recession. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down more than 800 points, falling into bear market territory at one point before late rally shaved off the losses. The index closed down 486 points to finish at 29,590, the lowest level of 2022 and a shade above the 20% decline from its high that defined a bear market. The S&P dropped 65 points, shedding 1.7% from its pre-market starting point. The tech-dominated Nasdaq plunged nearly 300 points or 1.8%. And let's just leave that over here. The current numbers are certainly scary. Chief Investment Officer, Commonwealth Financial Network. The truth is there's a lot to worry about. The markets that were rattled by the Fed's recent 75 basis point hike, as well as the precipitous decline in the British pound against the US dollar. The UK's new Prime Minister, blah, blah, and that takes us on to another article. So here we are. The news is spelling out we've got a recession. Quiz time. Why do we have a recession occurring? The reason why we have a recession, I actually took there's a property investment group and I'm in it on Facebook. It's like an investment property page. And I saw someone post there saying, hey, Nathan, hey to the community. I'm just trying to remember what it was. It was something like the fact that what should they do with their financial position? Should they sell off their properties? And I looked at it and I thought to myself, people are now questioning whether they should sell off assets because they're pushed too hard, right? What's happening in every household, right? So if we think about it, we've got the stock market falling, we've got cryptocurrency falling, we've got property markets. I haven't seen a crash yet in any market. Like I'm actually seeing the bottom end of the market, prices are rising, but in some areas, it is dead out there in the market. I'm looking at other areas which are multi-million-dollar areas around here, and we're seeing all new time highs, which is a very strange thing to be seeing out there. But looking at the posts out there, looking at the sentiment of people in the market, right? Whether it be, average houses drive down the street, who would be having the conversations over their dinner table overnight? You've got people that can't afford to put petrol in their car. People can't afford to pay their mortgages now. The average mortgage of $1 million in Sydney, what's happening to those people's houses, right? I know for my portfolio, my tenants, they can all cop a $50 rent increases. Great. I'm earning more money than what I ever did beforehand from my portfolio because the rents are rising. But what happens and they can probably afford it because they're at 300, go to 350. It's not really going to affect their budget too much. But when you're looking at $1 million mortgage and it's gone up by 2%, that's 20 grand a year. 20 grand a year is $400 a week. How is that extra family going to afford the extra 20 grand a year? How is their boss going to afford to pay them an extra 20 grand? The boss with their business is now suffering from inflation on all their things. There's a big, massive systemic risk underlying issue out there in the marketplace that people aren't looking at the moment. So we're starting to see that roll out. People might go, okay, I've got to sell my shares. People will be like, I can't buy new shares. People will be like, I've got to sell my crypto. I know I paid 60 grand for Bitcoin and it's only 30 grand, but I need to pay for the kids' nappies. I need to go and, put petrol in the car, etc., etc. So we're now starting to see a deflationary cycle because they're taking liquidity out of the markets. They've injected trillions and trillions of dollars into the market. Now they're just taking out a little bit, and the system can't afford it because everybody's, stuck on this cheap credit cycle that we've got. I'm just going to get some water out. Got a bottle of bubbly water here today. Not endorsing that brand of water either. Just that's what I had at my disposal. So interesting time. So as we go on to the next article, There's lots of articles that I don't have today because I don't want to be here all night. I want to be respectful of everyone's time and try and keep it as a short one tonight. But there's lots of articles. So there's an article that came out the other day about Bank West. So apparently Bank West has shut down all of its banks. I've heard from someone yesterday that ANZ, I can't find an article on it, but there's an article somewhere about ANZ apparently closing some banks, or you can't get access to them or something like that. But then we go and look at places like this article here. This is from Al Jazeera. Lebanon banks will remain shut indefinitely after heist. I want to laugh when reading this out. However, I don't think it's really laughable because it's pretty sad out there. Banks in Lebanon will remain shut indefinitely after the country's banking association said a spate of bank heists has made opening branches too dangerous. Too dangerous, right? Do you remember when they started saying, oh, we're closing the bank because of Corona? Just here in Australia, right? Doesn't matter if it's the local Westpac had it on it, an ANZ bank that I know had it on it. It said, we're just closing just due to Corona. We're only open up a couple of hours. Go to the local branch. We're short-staffed because of Corona. And they never open up again. Right? The banks never open up again. They use all these different excuses, and the next minute the bank's gone, and you have to drive another few kilometres to get to the next branch. This article goes on to read, at least 8 banks were held up by depositors last week trying to get access to their own savings. So imagine going to the bank with a gun and saying, give me all your fucking money, right? And doing a fucking stick up in the bank. When you go to court, like, you're going to go to jail because you're trying to steal money from the bank. You're not stealing the money from the bank because it's actually your money. But was it ever your money because you're just a depositor in the bank? And when you're the depositor in the bank, you're just a creditor to the bank. If you work out how the bank works, is the money really your money when it's in the bank, or are you just a creditor if the bank was to go under? So these people in Lebanon, and this, there was a bomb that went off, and I told some of my Lebo mates, hey, I think there's something a bit sus about this because it was right next to the central bank in Lebanon when it went off. There was that big bomb that went off a couple of years ago, which I still believe was very sus. And ever since then, there's been a banking issue that's plagued Lebanon. But now we've got in Lebanon, you can't get to the bank. Don't worry about getting your money out. Your accounts are frozen. You can't pull it out. You can't go get cash. You can't go to an ATM. It's all the sounds that were there, in Greece in 2010 or whenever it was. 8 banks were held up by depositors. It is funny, but it's sad because there was a story of a lady, I don't know if it's in this article, but it says, it is still not clear what indefinite means. Al Jazeera has reported from Beirut. Banks are closed, but to a certain extent they are maintaining a service. For example, depositors are able to access money from ATM machines, but only in the local currency. Why? Because the currency is failing. Strict measures have been put in place since 2019 preventing depositors from accessing their dollar savings. The rules have led to anger with depositors desperate for their savings because the economy has all but collapsed, according to Coda. That's interesting, right? There's a couple of things that I took from that. Strict measures have been put in place since 2019. When did that bomb go off that caused a lot of damage? Was that not just before that? 2019, what happened then? Oh, that's right. No, it didn't happen then. That was before the, illness that everyone was about. So why has it been crashing since 2019? Oh, that's right. That's when the liquidity crisis started in September 2019, and all the banks started imploding, and the bank repurchasing their agreements every day since about the September 17th, 2019. The banks went broke and they had to do short-term lending injections into the banks, which is all being covered up now, but we've got an issue because we stopped covering it up. Interesting to read. On September 14th, Lebanese woman, this is a sad story, forced staff at BLOM bank branch in Beirut to give her thousands of dollars from her own account by waving a replica gun in order to fund her sister's cancer treatment in a hospital. That's really fucked up, right? She's after a few $1,000. She can't get a few $1,000. What would happen if that was your bank? You might be thinking, oh, well, that's Lebanon. It's not here in Australia. But what are we seeing in Australia? I'm going to get to more articles very shortly about what we're seeing in other nations, which is these, the UK, for example, which is one of my next articles to go into. So Hafiz has been lauded as a hero by many Lebanese and told Al Jazeera that her actions were a response to the bank stealing her money. On the same day, Hafiz entered the BLOM bank. An armed man entered a branch of Bank Med in Lebanon city of Alay, attempting to retrieve his savings. The man obtained some of the money before handing himself over to the authorities. Many people are not finding any jobs, and they are really going to blame the banks for impairing their position. Will there be enough cash in those ATMs when that happens, or will people still not be able to access their dollars? Economic and social crisis. The Lebanese economy has been struggling since late 2019 in an economic meltdown described by the World Bank as one of the worst the world has witnessed since the 1850s. The International Monetary Fund on Wednesday said the Lebanese government's slowness to implement desperately needed reforms was exacerbating the country's economic meltdown. The IMF held a 3-day visit to the country, interesting, 3 days, to discuss the implementation of reforms with Lebanese officials that were agreed on by both sides in April. Despite the urgency of actions to address Lebanon's deep economic and social crisis, progress in implementing the reforms as agreed under the April SLA remains very slow, the IMF said. So I said that what we would see, and those that were in my mentoring program 2 years ago, and you can get access to the mentoring program, it's $3,000, check it out on the website. It's basically 100 hours of these type of videos before the position we're in that's happened today, before that we entered into the meltdown of society, before all that, there was writing on the wall that had occurred. I actually said, for those of you that remember it, right, I actually said that when we see the GFD, which is the global financial depression, no one's ever called it that, I called it that, it's a global financial depression that will end. There's 2 ways out of it. One is to let the whole thing implode, which is like what we're seeing at the moment. The other is to print our way through it and go to hyperinflation. I believe that they're trying to control their inflation, and they're going to have to take the finger off the trigger and just let the hyperinflation run through. So I'm not scared at all, and I'm very, very excited by that. But I did say that our central banks will go under in the future. Our central banks will go bankrupt, and we'll need the IMF to bail us out. And there's a thing called an SDR, which is a special drawing rights, which is just a basket of all different other nations' currencies that they use as a hedge, as a base to base on currencies on. So based on that, if we go and look at the Aussie bank, the RBA, there's a $37 billion loss of the bond market, which happened like last week that they announced. I don't have the article here, but we're now looking at a world where we've got, we're now looking at a world, which article is this from? Just trying to see which website this is off. We're now seeing that there's a $37 billion loss from the RBA in Australia, and we're now starting to see all the central banks around the world implode as their currencies are imploding. So interesting to see that. Takes me on to this this article here. I think this is from, that's what I was just trying to look at, was from IT Daily or something, itnews.com. This article is from itnews.com. Article says the RBA goes public with the digital currency plan. So what else has happened this week in the news? What else happened? Well, Optus got hacked, and lots of data got stolen, which is, surprise, surprise, that now the government's coming out saying, well, we need to have greater reform for that. Let me just have a sip of drink. Before filming this, I was filming 3 hours worth of videos that's going to be really cool for you guys, which is all about deals of people making money. So a little bit out of water in my throat. So here we are looking at this article. The Reserve Bank of Australia and the Digital Finance Cooperative Research Centre, DFCRC, have released a white paper requesting submissions into a possible Australian central bank digital currency, which is called a CBDC. The white paper is a part of RBA's DFCRC's ongoing research pilot to identify a case for a central bank digital currency in Australia. In its white paper released on Monday, the RBA said the project intends to test a general purpose pilot CBDC issued as a liability of the RBA for use in real-world pilot implementation services offered by the Australian industry participants. The report added any compelling use case, whether so-called wholesale or retail, will be explored in the project. So this is a central bank digital currency, and it's programmable money. It's a social credit system. It is a social credit dollar. It is the digital bucks that I've talked about for the last 2 years. Your identity will be tied into this. They're now putting reform through because there's been some hacks that have happened out there, and they're now saying that you need to identify, know your client. If you want to go set something up, you need to do voice activation, the director ID, all these things which is collecting your data to try and track you to a specific account. If I put out stuff that I'm talking about today, oh, Birchie can't hop into his Tesla now because we won't let him drive anywhere. Hence why you'll never see me in one of those fucking electric vehicles. I'll be having the shittest of shit cars that have no electricity, no computers in them, because of the ability that you can drive and still use them when no one else can drive anywhere. So the CBDC is a it's a mark of the beast type of system. And it is very, very evil, because if you imagine, I saw on someone's Facebook post, it was Justin had posted on his Facebook wall today. I might actually go and read the post. I'll get it a little bit later and have a read of it, because it was an interesting thing. I'll pull it up on my phone whilst we're here. Just give me 2 seconds, because it's going to be fun, right? It's going to be fun. This is the world that we're heading into. So just give me 1 second. I remember seeing it, I read through it, and it's like, yeah, here we go. You're standing at the supermarket. So let's just imagine this, right? This is their new currency that they're bringing out. I'll read the rest of the article in a minute, but this is very important, right? Just so we can put in a context, because it's a bit hard. Some of the things that I say are very whacked up, very weird and very out there. But locking yourself in the house, forcing yourself to do certain things to your body that you don't want to do, they all seem like a very weird thing going back many years ago. But here we are now. So just have an open mind. You're standing in the supermarket. You've got maybe 10 items in your basket, less than $40 worth. The cashier scans the item, then you take your card to pay. But when you put your PIN in, the card machine makes a weird beeping sound. Payment declined, the screen says. That's weird, you think. You know you've got enough money in the account. It's not that, and you definitely put the PIN in right. Maybe it's the cooking oil. It's imported. We have a lot of issues with that, the cashier says. Huh? You give them a blank stare. Important stuff has a massive carbon footprint. Important stuff has a massive carbon footprint, apparently, he says. Maybe you've used up your allowance. Have you been on a trip recently? You may have to wait until next month. As crazy as that may seem, thanks to a new digital currency that's about to be piloted in Australia, all over the world, the exactly kind of situation which could be possible. Unlike the money in your bank account or cash in your pocket, this new money can be programmed by the state. The authorities can create rules as to how and when it is spent. That could limit on your carbon footprint, or the rules on buying stuff that's bad for you or bad for the environment. Theoretically, anything is possible, meaning the state could effectively have the power to approve or deny anything you do with your money. And don't just take my word for it. As Philip Lowe, the head of the RBA of Australia, has put it, he's even hiding this. On the horizon, there is the possibility, someone's commenting, I'm seeing double things here, possibility of programmable money, which contains self-executing, where is it here? On the horizon, this is from Philip Lowe, is the possibility of programmable money, which contains self-executing code that triggers a payment when a specified condition is satisfied. It turns out horizon may be closer than you think. This digital form of money is being trialed in Australia. So this is what the article is saying right now that we are reading. All participating use case platforms must be integrated with the pilot CBDC platform via Privacy Gateway. It will take place on a private Ethereum using JSON, RPC, APIs, and smart contracts. So it's using some crypto, right? But if you think for some minute that you're going to have Bitcoin or any of those cryptos that are out there be your holy grail, this is not a cryptocurrency. It is a private database that they are trying to use like a cryptocurrency. Crypto can be used for freedom and peace and prosperity like never seen beforehand, or it could be used for your ultimate enslavement. And they're not going to let you use it for peace and prosperity. They're going to use it for control, as a control system, and pure enslavement, just like the Matrix. The pilot CBD will be called the EAUD, so the Aussie dollar is called, right? And denominated in Australian dollars with the smallest amount totaling 1 cent. The white paper said no interest will be paid by the RBA on any holdings of EAUD and will be capped at that amount determined by the RBA. As part of the research, only Australian participants and businesses will be able to hold the EAUD. All holders of EAUD will need to be identity validated by the use case provider or an approved KYC, which is a Know Your Customer service provider. The paper added the EAUD will be able to be held on both a custodial wallet provided by a use case provider or a non-custodial wallet directed by the end user. The EAUD platform is intended to be agnostic with the technologies and networks that use case providers use to interact with it. Pilot use cases may be implemented on traditional technology platforms or public or private distributed ledger technology (DLT) platforms as best suit the use case and provider preferences. Deadline for the industry expressions of interest closes in October with selected use cases for pilot CBDC by December 2022. The CBDC pilot will be shut down by April 23 and finding released around the middle of 2023. So let's just go back through that. The CBDC pilot will be shut down. It will start from December. The interest closes in October. Use cases for the pilot will be by December 2022. The CBDC pilot will be shut down by April 23 and finding released around the middle of 2023. Head of Payments Policy Department Ellis Connolly said that the central bank does see potentials for well-designed, well-regulated stablecoins to make a contribution to providing better services in Australian households and business. However, it's noted it's really important that we get the regulation of this right, given the high risk of the crypto market. So they're saying, don't buy Bitcoin, go and use our coin that we can turn off from you. What is a risk, right? What is the risk? The risk is that you are totally controlled by this communist network. This is worse than anything that any of us could ever imagine. I've talked about it beforehand. I said we should go and get access to food, water, shelter, electricity, barterability things, things that you could trade, whatever that may be for you, and assets that will bring you cash flow. This is a very scary thing, right? And it might sound whacked up, it might sound something you don't want to hear, but it's very, very much happening out there. This here is my last article for today, and then I will get into, why I like debt, right? So the British pound hits a record low in a big warning for Australia. So just remembering, what have we got? Let's just do a bit of a recap. We have the Dow Jones that's dropped 3,000 points in 10 days. So 10% of the Dow Jones has been lost in 10 days. In any sort of world prior to now, that would be a fucking catastrophe. That would be like a fucking, the sky is falling in. 10% in 10 days, right? But no, everyone's been fucking crying over the Queen. Everyone's been fucking hidden by all this shit happening out of the media, right? We've lost 10% of the stock market. Do not forget that that's happened. It's broken through a major support level at the 30,000 points on the Dow. That is interesting in itself. Then we have the banking systems. We've got a $38 billion loss in the RBA with their bond buying program. We've now got the Lebanese banks, which have been blocked off from the world. We've got bank closures, such as Bank West and potentially other banks that are having closures. Now we're seeing here a very, very interesting article. I'm going to read that to you because it's going to make for some interesting conversation for us. The alarm in China as boss goes into panic mode. That's another part of here, a different article. British pound. The UK pound has plunged to its lowest level on record. Right? How long has the UK pound been around for? Like 200 years? You've got the sterling, you've got the British pound. The UK pound has plunged to its lowest level on record ever. Right? In a catastrophic day in the British currency that serves as a major warning for Australia. As the next chart shows, the pound has taken an enormous beating in the last few months, and on Monday, the Australian time, it capitulated completely. It crashed to even lower levels in the dark days of the 1980s and now buys just over $1. So everything is crashing against the US dollar because the US dollar is what everything is priced in. And then you have to convert to US dollars to then go and buy things like oil or to trade around the world. So that's getting stronger, and all the other currencies are dying around it because of what's happening with our monetary policies. The system cannot support rate hikes. The system cannot support, the things that are going on out there at the moment with quantitative tightening. Something has to happen. With losing 10% of the stock market in 10 days, what's going to happen in the next month? What's going to happen in the next month? I always said, and you guys will remember this, I said 3, 4, 5 months ago, I said between September, October, and November, we will see a moment which looks like February 2020 when the stock market lost 20, 30%. Everything falls into free fall. That'll affect every market. It could affect property, right? But what came from that? They had to try and push these markets up because everything was dying. That's going to be the fun part, right? And I think we're just on the back of this, right? Most people here are fearful about interest rates going up and, what happens when if interest rate goes to 10% and all that. People are basing it on fear. They're reading too much news. They're not basing it on any substance. So when people say those things, I'm like, fucking turn your TV off. It's like going, Corona. It's like, ain't a Stephen King movie out there. People ain't fucking walking around dead like zombies. Well, they are, but not for a virus that they caught. It's for other reasons. But when you go out there and have a look, right, if you didn't have the news on, you wouldn't think anything was really fucking different. But here is the pound, and we can see it's dropped from $2.50 US from the top here, and that was in 1980, and then went down to the lows, and it's gone up and down, and it's just been slowly dying. And now we're at our lowest point here, and that's at just over $1, like $1.05. What will happen from that? You can see that there's a trend line, and that's these currencies are dying. They're dropping like flies around the world, and that will happen to Australia dollar. What will happen when the Aussie dollar drops, right? Let's just think about that. So if you've got inflation already, this one, you guys may need to get a stiff drink to talk about this. I'm just going to have some more water. You might need a bong to listen to this, right? Someone will take the bottle afterwards, right? Because this is pretty deep shit. What happens when the Aussie dollar or any other currency drops down? So let's say this chart here, in 2015, the UK pound was, let's call it, what is it here, about, where are we? Like $1.50, $2.50, right? As the dollar drops, that means that you need more of these dollars to go and buy something based in US dollars. What gets traded in US dollars? Steel, copper, petroleum, PVC, the plastic bottle that my drink's made out of. Anything that is traded is based in US dollar. So if you've now got inflation going up, we've got the interest rates going up, right? What happens when you have to go and buy something in US dollars? Let's call it, I bought some stuff the other day from overseas, right, on eBay. Those things, if we go and buy in the UK now, they would become cheaper. You'd need less Aussie dollars to go and buy them. But what happens if the Aussie dollar falls against the US dollar? That means that we'd need double the amount. That means that everything in our local currency will then create even a higher level of inflation because we need more money to buy the same shit. So then our currency will crash even further because we're going to have a higher inflation because we're going to pay more money for it. Hopefully I haven't done your head in with that. Maybe you need to revisit that, right? But as our currency, let's say our dollar drops from $1 to $1 to 50 cents, whatever it may be, right? That means we need double the amount of our dollars to buy the same shit. But everything's now backed in the US dollar. So that means that you need to then spend more for it, which will create even more inflation and a more hurt to your household, which will cause even a bigger depression. The only way out of it is just to destroy the currencies. When we start looking at things like what we're reading in the media there, what is happening? That is exactly what is happening today. So it's the crash of our currency. We're going to read it. He says, "Oh, one mercy is the Queen wasn't around to see the currency with her face on it being debased to such extent." Well, how come this has all happened in the last week? Right? It's convenient timing. It's a convenient cover. Everyone, you turn the news on, it's like, oh, the Queen and oh, King Charles, whatever. He's the good guy. I read an article, right? I read articles just for the fun of it. I just like it's like reading a comic book, right? Like you read a comic book and it's very comical, right? It's all fiction. But I read this article and it was about King Charles. He's a good guy, right? Everyone going in and saying all these things. And it was a news article and I was reading it. It's like 10 people on the street had said, yeah, he's actually showing a great thing of what he's doing. And then another person said, oh, it's great to see that he's doing this and this and this. And basically, it was like five testimonials of 1 minute grab, like one line grabs from all these people in the street. And I read it and I was like, this sounds no different than if I was reading an article in North Korea thinking, okay, little Kim over there is like the god, right? It's just propaganda, right? It's literally just propaganda. And they saying, oh, it's because of this or it's because of that. You got all this shit brainwashing you, programming you. And no one's asking the real question. No one's sitting here going, oh, wow, yeah, the stock market just dropped 10% in a week, right? That's a fucking catastrophe, right? But no one's asking anyway. Let's go and read about allegedly why the crash of the British pound, the UK pound. The reason one for the unprecedented collapse of the pound is the world is becoming more dangerous, financially speaking. Recession talks in the air as central banks try to slow down their economies to stop inflation from getting any higher. Well, that's one of the reasons. But just remembering that now that the UK pound has lost its value by like, let's call it 25% or whatever, that means that anything that they're buying and importing is now going to cost them a lot more. It doesn't mean importing it from US. They have to use US dollars to go and buy in China or buy whatever. Whatever you're importing has now gone up even higher. So there goes inflation even greater, right? So the treatment for the problem that's out there is causing the more bigger problem, right? This is why going back all these times, I've calculated and been like, this is physically impossible for them to be able to execute what they're trying to do. And they're mathematically fucked. And it's a checkmate position. And ultimately, they're either going to see a massive depression, which the depression will then crush everything that's around there, or they're going to have to then turn the money printers back on and then go back into stimulus mode, which there's a cycle that's occurred. And if you notice the last year, from about September last year to about September the 24th this year, you will notice that they've sort of put everything on the back burner, right? The monetary policy change. What will be interesting if we see moving forward from about the next month or so, moving forward, is if monetary policy changes. And there might be, I think next week we'll see a 0.25% rate hike. Some people saying 50 basis points, some people saying all different shit. I reckon 25 basis points, so just expect it. I'm excited about it because this is only going to sit around for a while. They're going to have to, unless they crash the banks, they crash the currency, everything dies here, they're going to have to print more money and make that currency cheaper. The only way that the UK is going to be able to pull themselves through this is by bringing down the value of the currency even greater. Interesting times. When recessions happen, investors like to move their money into safe investments. The safest investment in US is US bonds. They call it a safe haven. Well, let's just remember what happened to the US bonds recently. We saw an inversion of the yield curve that went from that the 2 year is paying more than the 3 year. The 2 year is paying more than the 10 year. The 3 year is paying more than the 10 year. And as we see the shorter terms have a higher yield to them, that's an inversion of the yield curve, which will then in turn cause for a liquidity crisis, which is very interesting. So they're saying to go buy bonds, but the bonds is a trap, right? The bonds is a trap. To buy US bonds, you need to have US dollars. So investors need to buy US dollars on the currency markets. The extra demand makes the US dollars go up, just like demand for any product makes the price go up. The effect is exacerbated by currency traders trying to get ahead of the game by buying US dollars in the expectation that the bond traders will soon need to do the same. Part of the reason the pound is getting pounded is that the US dollar grows strong as the world economy gets wobbly. The Australian dollar is also down against the US dollar. Reason two, the UK is looking less and less like a safe haven. The new government is cutting taxes and spending up rather than paying back debt, and investors do not like it. So, as they start doing stimulus packages and stuff like that, it's very, very bad. The UK got a prime minister on September the 6th, 2 days before the Queen carked it, and her new treasurer put the mini. It said here that she died, but carked it sounds more fun. The treasurer put on a mini budget shortly afterwards. The budget has been extremely unpopular, giving tax cuts to the rich in the hope that will sustain the British economy to perform better. Tax cuts are not likely to achieve that. While they are likely to accelerate inflation, the British central bank is expected to react by lifting official interest rates. It's like having one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake at the same time. You don't go anywhere and wreck the engine. No, you don't. You do a fucking burnout, right? And then you have a bit of fun, right? You get a bit of wheelie happening, get a bit of drifting happening. That's what happens when you put your foot on the brake. It's when you take it off. It's good. Could have a bit of fun. The warning. Australia's new Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, is bringing down his first budget in October, and he should be looking at the UK's situation with serious concern because he proposes, like the UK, to deliver big tax cuts that mostly benefit the high-income earners. Those tax cuts have become known as the Stage 3 tax cuts. They are an old idea brought by the Turnbull government under then Treasurer Scott Morrison in 2018. The tax cuts were supposed to be rolled out over the following 7 years, but we don't have to stick to that plan. The world has changed quite a bit since 2018. For one thing, inflation is the new enemy. When the government cuts taxes, it encourages spending, and spending makes the businesses put up prices, creating inflation. We don't need more of that right now. Another relevant change is we have enormous debt. Much of it is caused by handouts during the pandemic. If we think about it, they actually started stimulus packages before that, back in 2019, way before the alleged illness had come and affected everybody, when we saw rate cuts drop in 4th of June 2019. It says here, the Commonwealth Government is forecast to soon go over $1 trillion. If the government leaves the taxes in place, it can help return the budget to balance sooner and prevent the debt from growing larger. Well, that's interesting, right? Because if you look at the fact that the government's now got $1 trillion, what happens when those bonds go up? What happens when the interest rate for the government goes up? The government was taking out debt at 10 basis points. Now it's taking out debt at 235 basis points. By the time those bonds roll over that the government took out, if they go up and have to renew their bond from 10 basis points to 235 basis points, that's 2,350% higher than what they paid for it. That means that the government's debt bill has gone up 23.5 times. The government will go broke. You're starting to see the picture here. They are mathematically fucked and they can't increase these rates. It's amazing. If Mr. Chalmers emulates the UK and unleashes the budget that delivers big tax cuts, he must acknowledge that he does so having seen the warning signs. Financial markets could deliver an instant verdict that considers such a move irresponsible. The upside, with the pound in doldrums, your trip to the UK just got more affordable. The pound is not quite so bad against the Aussie dollar as against all other US dollar, but it's still weak, meaning we can buy 60 pence now with the Aussie dollar. That's interesting. Lucky for me, we'll have more tourism in the country. I'll get more people in the motels. Happy days. So whichever way you look at it, there's winners, there's going to be losers. That takes me on to the main part of tonight's discussion. And I'm going to try and keep this maybe like 10, 15 minutes, and then we can sort of wrap up here in an hour tonight. But my view on it is, like, you've got winners and losers. You've got, most people are sitting there thinking about, interest rates going from, this is a big thing, right? People are thinking interest rates are like 4%, 5% now instead of 2%, 3%. People are thinking, oh, well, I better make a decision based on that, right? You've got interest rates going up, but you've also got rents going up. You've got taxes coming. You've got different things that are happening out there. You've got, in the last 6 months, interest rates have gone up 225 basis points. It's a lot, considering where we came from. You got to look at where it's going to be in the future. So rent rises will be permanent. Rate hikes they are transitory because they will not stay at a certain level. As we just looked at, the government would go bankrupt if they had to roll over their debt at 23 and a half times more than what they locked in their debt 2 years ago. So, looking at the longer term, when you buy a property, it is for 30-year loan, 30 years at 12 months in a year. That's 360 months worth of interest repayments that you have to be paying, right? 360 months of interest repayments. So as you have 360 months of that, most people are looking and going, oh, well, it's gone up since last month. There's an extra, 0.5%. That's going to really hurt me. That'll hurt you today, but that's not going to hurt you in 5 years' time. What's the long-term trend of what your interest rates are going to be? What happens in a year's time when your rents have gone up $100 and the rates start dropping by 2% at a go? What will happen at that point? Is that something you've considered into your budget? Is that something you've considered into your strategy? Is that something, are you looking to, short term at the moment and not at the long term? I said to everyone something, you might remember this from back in maybe around March in 2020. I made quite a lot of comical statements back then, but one of them was, if there was a fire, you've got 500 people in the room and there's a big fire, everyone will be running out of the fire. And when they run out of the fire, they'll be leaving their wallets, their rings, their purses, their phones, everything on the ground. You'll have 300 people, 400 people that'll be running to the door, right? All the puppets are running to the door. They're running to the door. They leave all their shit behind. You've got the other 50 people in the room that are sitting there crying. Oh, what's going to happen, right? They're not going anywhere. They're going to suffocate, right? Then you'd have a couple of people that'd be like, okay, let's just fucking keep our emotional intelligence strong here and think, what is the opportunity, right? So what I'd be looking at is that in a building, let's say like office building, for example, there would be a fire stairwell or whatever, right? And you could calculate, well, if I hid in the fire cupboard, these bricks that are going to be here, they're going to be, a 4-hour burn time before smoke gets in. And I can calculate that in the next 4 hours, somehow that the emergency department's going to come, they're going to put out all the fire, and then I'm going to be able to remove myself from there and be like, oh, everything's all fixed now. It's all charcoal or whatever. So be it. The opportunity is that if you could see all the wallets, rings, and watches sitting on the floor, you can go collect them, take them with you, hide in the fire stairwell, wait until the fire's gone because you've calculated that this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and then come out and be like, okay, that was pretty comfy in there. Everyone else is fucking out of oxygen. People are charcoal over there. Certain things have gone wrong. And, that's the scenario. We're in a market now. Everybody's running to the door. Everyone's scared. Everyone's shitting bricks. But it's important to take a zoom out, look at what's really happening out there, and understand the game that's out there. So my view is that debt is nothing, right? My view is just my personal view. Sorry, I just seen an email come through. Debt is cash, right? If cash is losing its value due to inflation, then what is debt? Debt is the opposite to cash, right? So the debt is becoming worthless with inflation, but whatever you've got as security attached to it is rising in value. So for me, how I see it is that the debt is the opportunity because the debt is the asset. The money is worthless. When I pay it back, it's more worthless because we're going to see more and more inflation. We're going to make the cost of money cheaper and cheaper. So yes, you can get something now, but what happens into the future? What is that debt going to look like in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time, in 5 years' time? How is that going to be affecting me? When this tide changes and people realize, shit, my dollars are buying me nothing, the whole currency system is crashing, people will want to get out and they're going to move to real assets. The bottle of water, who would have thought like 20 years ago, like just not put the bottle, I don't like the logos, I hate logos, that's why I don't wear clothes with logos and stuff like that. Who would have thought, 20 years ago, that a bottle of water with bubbles in it would be worth $5 for a bottle of water with bubbles in it, right? Who would have thought these things, right? But that's what it is. So when people start seeing that bottle goes up to $10 and certain things are starting to fall apart around them, then that's going to cause a major issue, and that's going to cause a rush to go to more valuable assets as liquidity starts getting injected into this system. As liquidity is like oil being squirted into some cogs, right? There's no oil in the cogs at the moment because they've taken it all away. but when they put it back in there, it's going to speed up, and things are going to happen at a faster rate. So for me, I see debt as a benefit, right? I wouldn't have been able to build, you know, be into the centimillionaire sort of position that I'm in. There's actually a tip of the day, as I was looking up the other day, there's only 55,000 people in the world of like 9 billion or so with over 100 million in their position. I would never have been able to get there if I didn't use debt as a part of my strategy. Is it the only strategy? No, but it is needed. Most people look at it and go, "Oh, I'm scared of debt." It's like that's the asset over there when you attach to something that's going to be inflated away. So it's not just the asset gets inflated away; it's the cash flow that's going to be inflated away as well. So whether it be my rents that arise, whether it be certain things that I have attached to debt rise up in value, whether it be cash flows from my businesses that rise due to inflation, the debt always stays at whatever it was, and that becomes irrelevant due to inflation. So looking at it, I look at debt from a good debt. I want to make sure it's bringing me cash flow. I want to make sure that the assets are being inflated. I want to make sure that the cash flow is being inflated, and the debt is a good debt, like not going out and getting debt for an afterpay and getting debt to pay for my Domino's pizza that I'll be buying, or whatever it is that people are putting on the debt, because it's absolutely ridiculous what people are doing with debt today. The masses out there that talk about being debt free, there's so many people go, "Oh, you should pay off your mortgage, you should pay off this, you should pay off that." Let's look at it from two perspectives, right? I can sit here today, talk about my portfolio like it is, and just be like, okay, let's call it $100 million. Like, if I bought my first property, and let's say I was earning, I don't know, $250,000 a year, right? That'd be a stupid job to get $250,000 a year, 250K. When I was in a job, I was working 2 jobs, and I was getting 100 grand a year for 2 full-time jobs. I thought that was great. But anyway, that was a long time ago as well. But let's say I was earning $250,000 a year, and let's say I bought properties for 300 grand for the first property, right? I then have to work, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 years, however long it takes to pay off that loan. Then I have to go buy the next property, work however long it takes to pay off that loan. In this period, if I was saving 100 grand, I'm gonna have to lose 30-40% of it in tax. I'm gonna get 60 grand. So I'm gonna have to save up double the amount of money to then be able to pay down that debt. I'm being extorted from the state. I'm being extorted from certain different things. The money that I've got is getting inflation at 7 or 8%. I'm losing the purchasing power at 7 or 8% via inflation. That's what they're reporting at. But your food's gone up, your water's gone up, your utilities bill gone up, your power bill's gone up by 30%, right? It's a lot more than your 7 or 8%. But you're paying off the debt. And then when you pay out that debt, you're only saving 3 or 4%. So it's really, it's a really bad story. So I could be sitting here saying I've got 5 properties and they're worth $2 million, $3 million, $4 million because I wanted to buy things cash outright, but that would have been the dumbest strategy ever. The debt in good sort of, amounts, not crazy amounts. Like when I first started, I was at 95% LVR. Who cares? But now my portfolio is probably at like 10% LVR or 15% LVR. It doesn't really matter. Who cares about 10 mil worth of debt, 20 mil worth of debt, 30 mil worth of debt? It's really irrelevant because it's at a low base, and being too over leveraged can kill you. Being too under leveraged can kill you as well. So it's important to understand how debt works, the benefits of debt, and how you can use it to your benefit. There's no way in the world that I'd be able to get to the position I'm at today without leverage. In my business, as I have a couple of hundred staff, I could sit here and say how great I am, but I'm not. I'm as good as the people I have around me. I'm as good as my team. You're as good as your team, the people that you have around you, your circles, your friends, your professional people that you have. So looking at it from that perspective, that's a leverage of resources. You can leverage anything around you, right? Your currency is just one thing. And a lot of people are fearful of debt because they've been told from poor people that debt is bad, right? And poor people give poor advice, and you need to look at your own personal position and go, okay, how will this affect? And workshop your ideas. Get Excel spreadsheets, get pieces of paper, draw what your end goal looks like, work backwards, work out a strategy, work out a plan. So I've had to learn over the years, right? I bought my first property. I wanted to pay it off, and I started paying it off, and then I didn't even know what equity was. I didn't know how to refinance, didn't know you could refinance the property. I didn't know you could pull your debt out. I knew nothing when I first started. And I just thought I better pay off my property. And then after I started paying down, I then bought another property, started paying it down, bought another property. Then I was like, fuck, I could just go and pull out equity. I don't have to work. I don't have to do anything. I can go pull out the equity because my asset has gone up due to inflation. I thought at the time it was because of how great I was and I was doing renovations and my painting did it really good or whatever was happening in my properties. But in reality, it was about the inflation that was happening because the currency was losing its value, and yeah, people were buying assets because they could afford to. So looking at it, there's been a big growth over the years. There's been a 20-year position for me to understand how debt works, to understand all these things that I'm talking to you guys about and sharing it with you. I don't think there's anyone else in the country that is sharing this information, looking at it so comical and seeing the fun side of it. Most people are like, oh, well, and they're talking shit because they don't understand how it works. But the system, if you understand how the system works, you can understand how you can, be a virus in that system. You can understand how you can take control of that system. You can understand how you can make that system work for you and build it as a part of your system. And I think, there's so many people out there thinking about how they can save a coffee each week and stuff like that, but it's a really poor sort of mentality. It's about growth and expansion. So how can you expand your position? If you've got more assets, you've got more hooks in the ocean, you can catch more fish. You've got more hooks in the ocean, you've got a bigger army of boats. You can go, buy a bigger fleet of boats and then go and catch a bigger fleet of fish and have a big operation. So I guess it comes down to your mindset and your strategy and your planning and all of that on how you can actually get there. So I think it's important, like, I didn't grow up with any financial advice. I had no access to it, right? There was literally no mentors. There was no, rich uncle. I was actually chatting to my cleaner today, and my cleaner goes to me, Nathan, what do you do? And I was like, oh, run some businesses. And I'm literally, when my cleaner comes over, always busy. I never speak to him like, oh, hello, how are you? And, just, on the computer, pump out 500 emails, whatever. And they ask me, how do you afford the car in the driveway? How do you afford the house? How do you afford this? And I was like, okay, I was waiting for this conversation to happen. And I told him, and she goes, oh, is this your dad's money? And I was like, well, my dad died when I was younger, right? My family ain't rich and well off, right? I helped my family out. So looking at that position, there's never been a rich mentor or anything like that that's been able to teach me. I'm just an average kid from Western Sydney that had to figure this out themselves. And when I started talking about all this stuff years ago, like maybe 5, 6 years ago, there were some videos I put out, and I was scared about talking about what I really thought because I thought that everyone was going to start criticizing, and people were like, stay in your lane, Birch. You stop talking about currency, stop talking about financial markets. You are good with properties, you're good at buying properties, only talk about that. I was like, shut the fuck up, right? I became successful because I realized it's not a property game. I'm not playing a property game, right? I'm a property investor. But most importantly, I am an investor. The property is my vehicle, one of my favorite vehicles, but it's only one of my vehicles. I've got many other vehicles, but the property is a vehicle. I'm an investor. I realize that this is not a property game. This is a banker's game. It is a financial game. It is a game which, is based on finances. At the end of the day, if everything goes in a recession, the property goes up to $1 billion, the property goes down to $1. Who cares about that? That's all just a game that underlays it. But the property will still remain there before you existed, before I existed, and after we go, the property will still be there. Ideally, if you don't buy one of those shitty properties that fall apart. But, this was here before us. This is here going to be after us. This is a game which is a property game, but it's worked based on the finances. It's a banker's game. It's a financial game. And once you can understand that, then the whole paradigm changes because you need to make sure that you're playing yourself in the finance market. Yes, there's mums and dads and people that are investing in the property, but there's a big difference, right? Like I sit here and talk to you guys about people that have got 5 properties, 10 properties, 20 properties, 50 properties, like they're packets of chips, right? Yeah, just go do this, go do that, do whatever. And sometimes I feel like I'm flippant, but those guys have got a different relationship with debt, finances, money, the system, and they have a very clear understanding because they've taken that time, energy, and effort to understand how it works. So for me, I think that's very, very important. The only reason why your property is worth anything is because other people can go and get debt. If no one could get debt, your property's worth fuck all. So if you can understand that, then you can understand, well, what's going to trigger those people to be able to go get more debt so they can get heavily into debt, and then they can push up the value of my asset because they're buying all the other assets around me. Then that's a different game. It's a different conversation you're having with yourself and having with, your decisions that you make. And I think a lot of people are getting misinformation because there's not many people out there that really understand the paradigms of the game that's being played. So just be mindful. I remember when I first started the business, I used to put out these little flyers. I used to do renovation videos, renovation workshops. And some of you guys that watch this, is someone just said this water's $8 in Sydney. Exactly, right? I was doing workshops at my rental properties, and I was like renovating, and I'll charge like, I don't know, $100 or something. People come along and get like 20 people. I'll do like a renovation tour of my properties and stuff. And I remember I handed out these flyers, and it said, numbers don't lie, treat your property investing like a business. You need to treat it like a business. You need to think about what a successful business has and work backwards and go, okay, this is the KPIs, this is our goals, this is what we've got to work with, this is our capital, this is where we're trying to go to, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to set out for the next 12 months, this is our budget, this is what we're working with. So, yeah, looking at it, you need to treat your investing like a business, understand that numbers don't lie, and have a picture of the whole game that you're working with, because most people are just looking two dimension and they're not looking at multi dimensions. This is not a property market. This is a banker's game. This is a financial game, and you need to work out how you can have your place in there and how you can dominate and how you can take advantage of that. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Um, you know, if I didn't have tens of millions of dollars worth of debt, I wouldn't have hundreds of millions of dollars worth of assets. That's just a simple point. So next time you go and do a deal, next time you go and think of how am I going to expand, just think that you can't do that if you don't want to do what it takes to get there, right? You want to be a good sports person, you can't be a sports person, you got to get up and spend all your time focusing on that skill set to become the best person you can. Go and understand and think about what steps you need to take in order for you to be the person that you want to be and live the life that you want to be using the resources that you want to use to live from. So on that note, that's what I want to talk about tonight. I noticed that there's lots of questions from you guys, so I might spend about 5 minutes on the questions and then we will jet. So thanks a lot for tuning in. What have we got here? What have we got? Lots of questions. So I'm going to the top. Rob said, mate, can you tell us more about these new Queensland land tax? A brief summary. I have discussed it beforehand. I will make a video on this and I will get my team to upload it shortly. I will... yeah, it's a land tax that you're referring to. So stamp duty, it's not stamp duty, it's land tax. It's Queensland land tax specifically. And I will do a video on that. And I will also do a Facebook Live, and I'll bring Ridwan Hannon from One Path Accountants to you guys over the course of the next couple of weeks. Not next week because I think he's away on holidays, but the following week I'll get him on board to do a video. But I'm not concerned whatsoever. If they did get me, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, but that's what I say. I'm not going to stick up for it, and I think that there's ways to protect yourself. So Hayden said, always be buying. Well, there's times to buy, there's times to be scared. As I said beforehand, some markets I'm very bullish in, some markets I'm not. Yeah, it just depends on what the opportunity is and the value that's out there. Morgan said, hey Nathan, do you refinance often all your rentals to exploit the bank's 4K cashbacks on offer? No, I haven't had a loan for about 4 or 5 years. I haven't used the banks, but I'm starting to use lenders again. But there's many different reasons why you should be refinancing, how to refinance, and different things to look at. Most people are looking at $4 cashback, people are looking at how they can save the cheapest interest rate. For me, I'm looking at what I can get from equity, what I can do to be able to push my position forward. If someone says to me, I'm going to give you the loans, I'm going to help you lend, well, I'll then use that lender until I can't use them anymore. Then I'll move on to the next lender because, yeah. Mahesh said, long time, mate. It's time to get back on the buying wagon. Soon I will call you. Good to hear from you, Mahesh. Hope you're doing well, and I'm ready whenever you are. Sako said, hey, mate, what kind of stimulus package will we see? Will it be anything like the JobKeeper? Yes, I think that the next round of stimulus packages we'll see will not be around said illness. I think it'll be more around how much of a good boy you are and the types of things you do. So there's a new world that we're heading into, and it's called an ESG, which is an environmental social governance, which will be based on a credit system, which will be based on that programmable digital currency that I was talking about beforehand. There'll be things called universal basic income that have been tried. I think it'll be Centrelink for everyone for your basic amenities. There will be stimulus packages, but the stimulus package is actually the treatment is actually the problem that's going to cause the next biggest problem. So most people are excited by seeing stimulus packages. I am, because I don't care, because all of my assets go up in value more and more the more that they inflate. But most people were happy that they had stimulus packages. Most people were happy that their property went up. Most people were happy that their car went up from 30 to 50K. But now they're not happy because they have to pay double for their Big Mac meal and they have to pay $8 for a bottle of water. Ken said interest rates not worrying me as long as the rents go up to cover the mortgage. Exactly. Clay, electric vehicles tied to a social credit system. 100%. Angela said what contradicts is that they are energy crisis, yet they are pushing green cars and trying to make it mandatory. Well, if you think about the things that need to go into building a green car, it is all a control mechanism and is there to control you, with your dirty diesel car, with your dirty petrol car. You cannot have that turned off. But if you are a bad citizen, you've posted too many things, whatever be bad, they don't like the way that you've talked, they don't like the way you've acted, they'll just push your car, turn it off, and you can't drive outside of a 5 kilometre radius or whatever the case may be. So it's not something that I would like to participate in. I never will get one. They're doing this. Economic Forum is already building a person carbon footprint tracker. Exactly right. A personal carbon footprint tracker. Rat's tail update. There's the rat's tail. It's growing by the week. Just having fun with it. I'll cut it off one day, but just growing it because I can, I guess. The New Zealand dollar is down 56 cents to the US dollar. We're in some trouble over here. Exactly. And as we start seeing those currencies crash, we're going to see more inflation and more pain out there. So it's going to be quite fun. Shelley said, can you please talk about the digital ID registration required by company owners by 30th of November? Any ideas how to not to have this or face the 13K fines? That I helped you set up on your self-managed super fund. What do we do now? Shelley, I think we should be catching up and having a chat about your portfolio for next steps. However, I'm just a simple person. I don't know much about this sort of stuff, and they've got to have a bit of amnesty there around that sort of stuff. So you just need to work out, if you are sure of what you're doing, and you didn't know if you didn't know. So thanks a lot for bringing it to my attention, and let's try and get it fixed up then. I'm not going to go and hand over all the ID and all that sort of stuff. That's a scary thing, and that's not something I want to play on. Morgan said, what did the Queen die of? Interesting. The Queen had some blue hands. She was 96 years old. She did look quite fit. I think she lived a very healthy life, and certainly not one that was full of, hooked up to devices and whatever. I always question, not did she die, but did she actually die? Did she die beforehand and they didn't tell us until now because it's a specific date that they told us, which is quite interesting? Or did she not die and she's just gone into hiding and she's gone off to be in retirement and step outside the public eye for the next couple of years? I don't know. I don't like to speculate on those things, but interesting things. Hey Matt, hope you're doing well. Morgan said, what happens in 20 years when interest rates are 0.5% and your loan is 100K and your house is worth 5 million with a 200K minimum wage? Buy up now. Exactly. I just leave the debt becomes irrelevant. I've got heaps of loans out there, 50 grand, 100 grand. These things are now worth $1 million, but I bought them when they're worth 150K. Rents were $150 a week. They were negative cash flow. Now it's $400 a week. The loans fuck all. The property's worth heaps. Sometimes I sell them. I actually do sell some properties now, but I've been buying really massive properties. So it's just a part of the strategy of where I'm at. So Darling said, when do you think interest rates start to come down, Nathan, or how high do you think it will get up to? I think they'll push it up maybe another one, maybe another two sort of times they'll push it up. Always said that I couldn't see the calculation of liquidity in the system supporting over 0.5% or 50 basis points. They've put that up well by now. I personally feel that we'll start seeing interest rates and a change and a reversal in monetary policy anytime from now until about the end of financial year, we'll see a turnaround in monetary policy, which will mean that we would start to see rates come backwards because everything's going into recession. The bigger they push them up, the bigger the recession, and the bigger the recession they have to starve themselves back from, and then they will, it'll be adding more fuel to the fire. They're going to have to do a lot more to stimulate this economy. Kylie said, thanks for sharing your honesty. Thanks, Kylie. Hope you're doing well. And we've got here, yeah, good chat, right? Have an awesome week. The Greens are trying to freeze rents for 2 years. I don't care what a government does. They're a bunch of commies. I hate the government. Stephen, have you been following the BRICS nations' movements, growth, and their central banks' big accumulation of gold? Any thoughts? I think it's important. Kings and queens have hoarded gold. All the richest people of the lands have held gold and silver and other sort of precious commodities for thousands of years. And their ego is so great they stamp a picture of their face on the back of it. Right? It's that as they can rule the land. I saw some other comments here. So I'm a big fan of precious metals and other sort of commodities like that. I have, I've been collecting metals for 2 decades now. It was one of my first investments ever was precious metals and coins and different sort of things like that. And I think it's important everyone has, a part of their, liquidity in, physical sort of commodities like that. I never have money in the bank. I have zero money in the bank every day. I'm completely broke. I want to spend all the money in my account every day because I know that I've got cash flow coming in. Tomorrow I'll have more cash flow coming through. The next day I'll have more cash flow coming through. And that's how I sort of operate. I know that I've got lots of things that are liquid that if I needed to, I could offload them within a very quick time frame. The cheers, Nathan. Thanks for that. It's a finance game. Matt said the Queen ran out of baby blood. I will leave that for those who know what he is talking about. She probably did. It's interesting. Shelley, look forward to catching up with you. I'll speak to the team and get a appointment booked in. Kane asks, thanks for the insight. Why did the Queen have blue hands? Kane, I think that you should do a little bit more research on that and work out why the Queen may or may not have had blue hands. A lot of people are getting what is it called? A micro-clotting that's happening nowadays. It's funny, I hadn't heard of lots of things in the last 2 years that I've heard of. There's been lots of people that I've known that have died of heart attacks and cancers and really bad things in recent times, and I wouldn't know what has changed in the world, especially for micro-clotting. And I say that with all due respect. I see a lot of people that are very close to me that are very, very sick from lots of different things. It's really, really, really messed up the world that we live in. So, choose your poison, choose your shot, and interesting time that we live. So, on on that note, sorry, I just got to ask, is there a webinar this week? The webinar will be next week. It's the first Wednesday of every month. There'll be details on next week's live. There'll be details on our social media pages of how you can join the webinar. It will be a very cool webinar. So make sure that you do join up. You have to register for that. It will not be open to the public. And on that note, I just want to thank everyone for joining in. I was going to keep it as a short Facebook Live this week, but I got excited with lots of things. Hopefully you've learnt one or two things, been able to share that gives you an aha moment to live a more fruitful and productive life and live life on your terms. So if you need help, improving your position, working out your strategy for next steps, or anything like that, there's a link in the description so you can book in a discovery session with one of my team. If you want help with building the portfolio, I build the portfolios for my investors here. Reach out to my team. They can book in for us to have a chat and go from there. Look forward to helping you out however I can. You can always email us admin@binvested.com.au, call us on 1300 367 925, flick us a DM, and just be careful. I'll never add you as a friend. B.Invested won't add you as a friend. We'll never be asking you for Bitcoin. We'll never be asking you to send over money unless you've conducted services with us. There's a lot of scammers out there, so just be careful that no one's trying to impersonate anyone to take money or your identity off you. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll catch up soon. Keep being awesome. Keep being alert. Keep being woke. Keep questioning everything. Don't obey without questioning, and keep kicking ass to live life on your terms. Catch up soon. If you like this, make sure that you share it with your friends and on your pages and in your communities. Tag your mates and flick us a like if you liked what I had to say. We'll catch up soon. Have a good one. Bye for now.